Hello everyone, a little bit late. It was a little bit late. I know my rendering period was awful and then the sound didn't work properly, but we got the video out yesterday. This one's going to be a day late than it usually is, but was on the LF Live, so check that out. But today was going to be going through the whole of the games. All 8 of them, some good matchups, some matchups with less meaning to them, but a lot of conference matchups this week, which I think is always fun. So, do not hesitate to jump straight in. We're not going to be spending too much time. We've got a bunch of links in the description of players I'm going to talk about. ELF Live links to other videos, so go check them out. Like, subscribe, whatever. Thank you very much. See you after the video. What better way than to start with the Vienna Vikings versus Raiders Tyrol, the Austrian rivalry. Of course, this one historically has gone towards the Vienna Vikings. They're 6-0, going against this kind of surprising 5-1 Raiders team. We'll start with Vienna, limiting the Raiders' run. Now, the Raiders are the #1 rushing team in the league. They have an incredible run game. Bonatti has been fantastic. Hasselvanta looks like a really solid player that can run that backfield as well. And limiting that with Schaefer, I think is going to be a big thing. He is injured at the moment. We're not sure if he's going to be in this game. That interior is going to be weaker. And I think boostering that, sending some heat in the A's and B gaps, I think will go a long way. That is predominantly between the tackles where the Raiders operate in terms of the run game. I think that'll be very important. Stretching out the defensive backs as well. You know, you have all these amazing receiver weapons. You've got Torre, who's on a potential Rookie of the Year, historical Rookie of the Year campaign. Reese Horn, who was leading the league in general in yardage. Jordan Burr's injured, of course, but people like Jonas Schultz and Kimi Limiama have stepped up. Florian Beerbaumer is still an available option. We haven't seen much of him at all. We're not sure if he's dealing with injuries, but there are plenty of options within this offense that they can use to stretch out the Raiders Tyrol. Get Ken Hag active and up to date. He's just come in, one of the best corners in the league. The Mercenaries made a massive mistake by releasing him, but the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Another man's trash, another man's treasure kind of vibe with this one. He is an excellent corner. If you haven't seen my video, I'll link that in the description of just how good he is. He's a little bit older now, but it still holds up. Getting him up to date with the playbook, really just involved with the organisation, allowing him to be comfortable, I think will go a long way in limiting Schaefer, in limiting Schneider and Hahn and all these great receivers the Raiders do possess. For the Raiders, you have the best run game in the league. The Vienna Vikings, 6th in rushing yards allowed. So they have a good rushing defense, but not an elite rushing defense. That could be utilised. As we mentioned, the interior is a little bit banged up for Vienna. They like to send pressure off the edges more than up the middle. I think that will go a long way. They're not unusually to be sent out the middle, but on the outside is predominantly where they operate. Bonatti, Hasselvanta, you got Tonko potentially back from the under-19 and under-20 cup. He might be a little bit banged up playing that, but congratulations to him and the Austrians in general, for both of these teams as Austrians, to celebrate the under-20 third place team beating America in the final, which is an amazing accomplishment. Not ELF, but absolutely needs to be mentioned just how proud the Austrians can be of their team at the moment. Perry needs to step up and be an elite QB, and it's time to play up in general. Like, they play up and down to their competition, the Raiders Tyrol, they absolutely do. They play bad against bad teams, they play good against good teams. Now is the time to step up and play good against the good teams. Perry has been kind of average, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, 56% completion rate in 3 games. He has been able to run the ball with, a little bit of success, 68 yards and a touchdown. But he's not blown us away so far, and it's time for him to make that step up. Schaefer is a good receiver when he can hold on. He's only operating about 47% catch rate, which is not good. But they got Schneider, who's going at about a 70% clip. You have good receivers. He can use them, and it's time for him to step up against the big teams, because this one is incredibly important. This could literally define the Raiders Tyrol season and how they think they can go for a championship. I think it's going to be 37-21 in favour of Vienna Vikings. I think it might be kind of close. It's either going to be really high scoring or really low scoring, and I don't think there's really much in between. It's either going to be a 6-3 or a 10-6 or a 37-21. I went for the latter. We'll see how it goes, but this is going to be a very good game. This is probably the best game of the week in terms of quality. I think it'll be a very exciting one. Next game we're going to look at Munich Ravens, arguably being the most disappointing team of the year so far. We really thought they'd be pushing for maybe even a division and maybe a championship, but that hasn't been the case. They're 2-3. Barcelona, a little bit lucky in some games, a little bit unlucky in others. They find themselves 2-4. The expectations were low, and they've kind of fulfilled what we thought was going to happen with them. We'll start with the Munich Ravens, as per. They need to get Stanley going. He's going to be the key for this team. He is an elite receiver, truly is, and I think he could have a big impact. We saw him obviously just signed in place of John Cole. He started pretty well, had a good opening game for himself. He already eclipsed John Cole's arguable impact. You could say John Cole got 102 yards in 3 games, Stanley got 98 in 1. So it's a big difference. He's an elite receiver. You have other players that can take the attention away from him so that he can thrive more. The defense has to become elite. They made a big culture change. They went from an offensive team to a defensive team with Ellison signing. Their defense has been kind of mid. They're 8th for rushing allowed. They're 4th for passing, which is good. 7th for yards allowed, 9th for points. This isn't the elite defense we expected to see when they bring in people like Evans Europa and Nitzlander and all these great players. They've just released Eric St. Robinson. As of the recording of this, they haven't announced who they have in replacement, but I guess we'll see. They missed out on Ken Hike, and I think that's quite a big one, but we'll see what they choose to do there. But it's time for the defense to be elite. This is a chance for a warm-up game. It's a chance to go 3-3. Barcelona are not the same level as Munich. Munich are better in pretty much every position, in offensive line, absolutely, quarterback and running back and defensive overall. So this is a chance to kind of stabilize themselves, get a good win, get some confidence, get some people back healthy. You can potentially rest some players early in this game. Not to be disrespectful to the Dragons, but they don't have much that they can offer for the Munich Ravens. As for the Dragons, defensive issues: 17th for rushing allowed, 15th for passing yards allowed, 17th overall in total yards, 16th for points. It's not a very good defense. They're allowing 32.5 points per game. You're not going to win very many games if you're allowing 32.5 points per game. Their run game is awful offensively. They don't have much going there at all. Their run games have been quite disappointing. Levi Lewis is currently leading the team in rushing with 224 yards and 3 touchdowns. Second place to him has 158 in 6 games, 158 yards rushing. Montana's 133, and other players making up a little bit of an impact. But that can't really fly, and I know the fault of that is the offensive line. The offensive line is terrible, and it all starts in the trenches, and it's both sides. Their run defense is poor. They're a bad defense. They really are. And their offensive line hasn't improved. They've taken a lot of sacks all season. They've been sacked 16 times, which is more sacks than they've distributed, which is never a good sign. And it all starts there, and I think that it's going to be quite an easy one, I think, for Munich. I think they'll have their starters out quite early. I think it'll be an average game for Barcelona, and I think it'll be a 35-0 in favour of the Munich Ravens. I just don't see many ways they lose this one. This game I think could be pretty fun. Milano Ximenes versus the Helvetic Mercenaries. I think it'll be fun for the same reasons that Milan versus Hertha were quite fun, in potentially teams showing improvement, and by teams I mean Milan. Milan are 3-3, Helvetic are 0-5, but Milan, they could potentially go 4-3 here, which is insane. You wouldn't have thought that at the start of the year, especially when you look at their numbers and just their breakdowns, but it comes down to who they played. But for the team to go positive, I think would be a massive improvement for them. They were awful last year. They're pretty bad at the start of this year. They've made improvements. They've got better a little bit every week. And the opportunity to go 4-3 would be very good for, A, getting the fans in, because Milan have always struggled with attendance, and I think this could be good, especially for momentum as well. And that could potentially be quite a good storyline for them, and potentially something to build off of, even getting in more Italian talent, If they can finish with a decent record, elite Italian prospects are more likely to come to them. You've got Cosimo, you've got Bua, you've got Vergani, you've got an absolute plethora. Grillo as well. You've got a plethora of Italian talents that aren't playing for Milan, but for them to have a good year, it could go a long way in getting them in. Callback spy will be needed with pressure. Like I've said before, you could send 2 at the pressure of that Helvetic offensive line and get through. They have Zachary Blair, who tore him up last time they played, because this is a rematch. Remember, Milan won that earlier game. Spy Aiken. Aiken's going to be taking off a lot. especially the pressure that I'm assuming they're going to send, and I expect them to send, from the edges, from the inside, here, there, and everywhere. Lots of blitzes, quarterback spy, and I think that will honestly lock up a lot of what Helvetic want to do. AFB coverage and blitz. AFB is still one of the best receivers in the league. Honestly, he's been extremely valuable for this team. He has over 490 yards so far this year. He's averaging nearly 100 per game. He's got 4 touchdowns. He's even playing defense now, which I strongly disagree with. Him playing defense is ridiculous for the team to try and do. But he is an elite receiver. If they can get a corner on him like Westfall, who performed extremely well in the last game that he played, then they could potentially have him out, put the blitz on, and it could lock up what Helvetic want to do. Because Helvetic are averaging 11 points per game, and that's very, very, very poor. For Helvetic, I'm tired, boss. I keep saying the same thing. I'm sure Aiken is saying the same thing. That's probably why he's tired. Tired of running, man. Tired of running around that offensive line. The offensive line is awful. They have running backs that aren't doing the job. You know, they're negative yardage in the last one. They brought in E's at DB, which they didn't need because they had all-star level players in that position. I'm tired of just saying about offensive line every single week. They don't have a running back through 5 games with more than 50 yards. Not 50 yards in a game, 50 yards for the season. The whole year. Aiken has 403. No one else has over 50. Yet they have multiple players with a fumble. 4 players, not including Aiken, have a fumble when rushing the ball. None of them have a touchdown. None of them have over 50 yards. It's an awful run game. And it's also because the offensive line is just cataclysmically poor. Short pass. This is, I've kind of gone on short pass and the run is not working at all. I've kind of just explained why the run is not working. But the pass is short, dink and dunk, because it needs to happen. Like I've said, the offensive line's terrible. They need to keep it moving somehow. And the short rack yardage with AFB is going to be instrumental. Spiller looks like he could be a very good complementary receiver. He's already got 309 yards. Dinking it off to those two is going to be really the only way they can get movement off. Defense is going to step down. They've just released both their DBs. They've released Strater, who I'm told wanted to stay with the organisation. He was a good player. They've cut Ken Hike, which is the worst move of the year so far. They brought in a new defensive back, and he has NFL experience as a practice squad member, so I'm sure he's a good player. But what can he do? Like, the defense is injured with Tim Harney out. I don't know what's going on with that team, but it's absolutely going to take a step down. I think they're going to be averaging a lot more points given up. They're averaging nearly 27 points per game, and I think that's going to jump up past 30. As for prediction, I'm going to go for Milan to win. I think it'll be quite a close one again. I'm going to go for a 20-7. It could be quite competitive, but ultimately, just too much going on in Helvetic to even really be excited about. Now, I spent way too long in that last one talking about a bad game, so I want to talk about a good game, Frankfurt versus Madrid. I think this one's going to be incredibly interesting. It has Western Conference divisional importance, which is always going to be extremely competitive in this division. It's insane. For Frankfurt, run the damn ball. They have the worst rushing offense in the league. They just scored their first rush in touchdown of the year, and they have a former NFL practice squad running back they've only given 35 carries to. Is absurd through 4 games. He's averaging 4.8 a carry. It's not bad at all. He got a touchdown, obviously, in the last week, and most of his yards came out of the last week. He didn't get much of the ball all in the previous ones, especially in the red zone. I don't know why they refuse to run in the red zone. It's honestly perplexing. It's baffling. It's bewildering. Why they do not just run the ball. And while you're on it, stop turning over the ball. We saw in the last game, and it wasn't a one-off. The fumbles, both of them on the run from a quarterback, and he fumbled the ball twice. A pick six, an early pick to give them a lifeline, or to give Hamburg a lifeline the last game. This isn't new. We've been saying this, stop turning the ball over for the last couple of weeks. It happens with every single game so far, and it's not changed. I know what they got to do if they got to make a change, but stop turning over the ball. Otherwise, something has to happen. They cannot keep doing this if they expect to be in the playoffs, or even positive, let alone the playoffs. Short routes come with risk. Now, Madrid are a very physical team. Jalen Embry is one of the best corners in the league this year. He jumps a lot of short routes. We've seen it with the Fire a couple of times, Nate 3 times. One got called back, but he jumps short routes. It's what he does. They have Oliveira, another ball hawk. They have Pablo Arreo, who I did a video on. I'll leave the link in the description. Ball hawks all over this Madrid secondary. A very aggressive defense. Short routes come with risk, and Luke is inaccurate. So, kind of, you put that all together, and we could have a couple of picks here. You know, Luke's only throwing at 57%, which isn't great. He's got 8 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Also not great. His average depth is about 7 yards. So they need to be careful with that. For Madrid, Duncan absolutely seems to be a confidence guy. When they're winning, they're winning. When they're not, they're not. It's the same thing we saw with him in Wrocław. Like, when they were up, he was playing well. When they're down, he seems to significantly regress in his decision making, and I think he's a confidence guy. Get an early one, get up, get Obi back in form with the run game, and I think that will go a long way in getting him back up to speed. While we're on it, we haven't really had an established number 2 receiver break out, and for me that's interesting. Willie Patterson's obviously the number 1 guy, but Raul Saneda, the tight end, is second in yards at 158. 158 in 4 games. Dwayne Obi has more receiving yards than Madden Siestro, and also Mario Flores, which I'm surprised by, because we've got Mario Flores, who is a very good complementary receiver I've talked about on this channel a lot. They've only given him 8 catches. I don't get why. We've got Madden Siestro, who I will remind they have as an E receiver, because he counts as German in this league, though he does have Spanish citizenship. And they've given him 6 catches. I don't really know why. They've given Obi the second most catches in the team, and I understand why he's a great back out of the backfield. But they need to get Flores, they need to get Madden Siestro the ball more. They kind of showed they were willing to, and then that's kind of gone away. So I want to see more of that. I think this is going to be a competitive game. I'm favouring Madrid just due to the turnovers. I think it's going to be a close one, but I'm still going to go for 29-21 in favour for the Bravos. I think they get back in form. They just look like the better team. They look a lot more competent. I think they get away with the win here. I think we can keep this one short and sweet. Berlin Thunder versus Hertha Throners. Berlin 3-3. Well documented second half performances, and that's the thing that's going to kick us off. They are poor in the second half. They absolutely need to improve, or they're going to let go of some of these wins. They've already lost a couple of games because of it. They lost against Rhein-Fire, they lost against Vienna, and the Wrocław loss has aged quite poorly. Their run game is also not off the ground, like, at all. The last game, they had an opportunity to kind of get it going a little bit more. It's 6th in the league, but I do think that's supplemented by having Sullivan run for quite a few yards. Albert has 190. You've got a former Rookie of the Year contender who only has 17 carries and 35 yards, 0 touchdowns. It's odd, it's confusing. I don't really know what's going on with the run game over there. It's always kind of been an issue with Berlin that they don't run the ball well, but this year it kind of seems worse, and Sullivan is on an MVP level season, so to be not giving him some support in the run game I think could come in very, very badly for them in the last half of this year. And they're playing a team that is 16th for rushing defense, so this could be a chance just to try stuff out, chance to build and wins as well. And they've got a couple now. They go to 4-3. It's an easy team they're playing against. They have weapons that should be able to kind of get the Hertha Throners out of this game quite quickly. And they need to score more. They've currently got 11.4 points per game offensively. That's not a win. That's not enough to win a game. Not enough to win a game. There are not very many games in any kind of level of football that you can win with less than 11 points. In fact, in the history of the ELF, there has been one game where someone has won with less than 10 points. That was a 6-3 win for the Surge last season. I don't think we're going to see that again, probably for a while. And to avoid doing that, we need to get Roby involved. Nick Alfieri on the ELF Live last night talked all about how they didn't get him the ball in the second half, and that needs to stop happening. They need to get him the ball. He's the best playmaker for a reason. He can get these short screens, he can take them all the way to the house. And for not using him is a very interesting tactic that I don't agree with. But there are turnover critters in this defense. They have one of the, probably arguably the best turnover defense in Rodon Enrique, who is an incredible defensive back who knows how to get the ball. He's got 2 interceptions. The big one against Milan in the last game. He got pick 6 earlier in the season. Dubai Regan, 3 sacks for him. They do have playmakers, but they need to cause the turnovers, and it might not help. I don't think it's going to. I'm going to go for a 34-7. I don't think the offense for Hertha really has the ammunition to deal with Berlin. Berlin are a top team, although they do have struggles. They are still a very good team, so I'm going to go for them to win quite comfortably, quite easily. Hamburg versus Paris, another very strong Western Conference matchup. This could be incredibly important for both teams going forward. Hamburg 2-2, coming off a quite close loss, but one they honestly really shouldn't have been in. Paris 3-1, a loss to Rhein-Fire, again, one they arguably should have won. So both teams have a bit of a chip on their shoulder. For Hamburg, offense needs to be more consistent. I've talked all about them during the stream. You can catch my streams up pretty much every weekend. And Javarian Smith is a splash player who make a big play every now and then, but isn't consistent enough, and he needs to nail that. They also have the 16th ranked rushing offense, which is not good enough at all. They, for some reason, aren't very good running, and I thought they would be better. I really did. They have Hardin Canido, they have Hamadi. Neither of those guys have broken much. You look at Hardin Canido, most of his yards are coming off of one run, nearly, and then Sam Hamadi only got 103 yards so far. So they've kind of abandoned the run in a weird way, and I don't really get why. They just need to find a bit more consistency. They're 16th for yards, and that's not good enough. The defense can get turnovers. We saw they forced turnovers against Frankfurt, and that was good. Really, really good. They do have a good turnover defense. They can force the ball out with the sacks because they have good playmakers off the edge. They got leap hits and interception. They have guys in the safety that can force the ball out. That's important. We saw how big those plays were in the red zone and how clutch that was. More of that. Paris have turnover issues. We talked about them before last week. They have fumble issues. The Galaxy exploited. If Hamburg can exploit that, they'll make this a very tough game. Of course, we talked about the run game being poor. The fumbles also, Javarian Smith has 3 of them, so it's not exactly been great for that. They've only got 5 rushing touchdowns, which, is not great. And overall, they're only averaging about 3.6 yards per carry. They've only got 5 touchdowns, less rushing yards than they've given up. I really thought they'd be a run-heavy team, and they kind of haven't really done much with it. For Paris, they have an elite defensive unit. And when I mean elite, I mean elite. They are a very, very good team defensively. I've talked all about their defensive backs, now linebacker core, and just how much French talent they have mixed with a great American talent. They're 3rd for rushing yards allowed. They're 1st for passing yards, 1st for total yards, 3rd for points. They are an elite defensive unit. It's actually incredible to watch just from a defensive standpoint. And the ball's been spread out nicely. I like that. We have Tegadam, who's kind of emerged as a very good player. He's got more yards than Austin Mitchell. Austin Mitchell started really hot in that first game. It was kind of fizzled out a little bit in the last couple of games. Florian LaRose is a great receiver that I've done a video on. Remy Bertolon, they've even get the ball to Dawson Dales now. Chika Hosal, Kevin Mwamba, Anthony Mahonwu hopefully back soon. They have spread the ball out a lot. They've got multiple touchdown scorers in the receiving game and also in the rushing game. They've had Augman. They've played Jordan Denmark Heath at running back quite a few times. They have guys that they can spread the ball out, and that's been a big part of their offense. Building off the last game, they made better decision making, and they did score 60 points. So you can only really be too mad at scoring 60 points in a game. So I think they're going to build off of that. I think that Hamburg and Cologne are relatively comparable. I think it'll be kind of a similar result. I think it'll be a bit closer. I'm going to go for 36-13, but it could honestly go a little bit more upside down for Hamburg if they don't capitalize on the potential opportunities. Another game I won't spend a particularly large amount of time on, Prague Lions 0-6 versus another team that is very much disappointed this year in the Wrocław Panthers. We expected them to be a lot better. For Prague though, quarterback woes, same issues from last year, and it feels like a lateral move. Not in terms of quality, but just in terms of what that quarterback's going to be able to do. Perkins looks like a solid player, he's just come from the Mexican League, but you could put Tom Brady behind an offensive line, it doesn't matter, because that offensive line is probably arguably the worst in the league. Their defense also, very, very well documented struggles. They're last in passing yards, they're last in a lot of different things. They aren't a very good team, and they are a very good team offensively. It's actually very comparable. Their rushing is okay on both sides. Their passing is last on both. Their total yards gained is 16th for yards allowed. Their total yards gained is 17th. Scoring, they're 15th on offense, and points allowed, they're 17th. They struggle everywhere. But they do create a couple of turnovers. They do have some turnover creators in this defense that have allowed them to make games somewhat watchable, but not very much, and it's been a quite disappointing season for them as a whole. For the Wrocław Panthers, where is the creativity we saw in the start of this team? Like, it's dissipated. I don't really know why. They still have an elite offense. They're 3rd for rushing, 4th for passing. They're 5th for total yards gained and also 5th for scoring. So they do have a very good offense, but just lacks creativity. The last couple of weeks it's kind of been declining. We know that Prague can't defend a pass. We know that Prague can't pass. So use both of those things. Uriah has been brought in to be the guy, now replacing Stephen Duncan. Make of that as you will, but this is an opportunity for him to pad his stats tremendously. Also a chance to get more weapons involved. Gentry Adams was the only guy that really caught a ball in the last game. We didn't see Andrea Botta Moreno at his full potential because I don't really know why they're not using Botta Moreno. It's one of the best he is the best tight end in the league, you could argue. And they're not really giving him the ball. Matt Cole's injured again, which is a shame. Kacper, who I did a video about, I'll link in the description, is a very good receiver who's been adding to them a little bit. Gentry Adams, they're using a lot more as a receiver than a running back. Chance to get more of those involved, should be quite an easy one. I'm going to go for 47. Like I said, this game shouldn't be close. But if Wrocław lose, then they're absolutely fucking finished. I don't think they will, but oh my gosh, can you imagine? Concluding the week slate of games. Ryan Fire, 5-1. Cologne, 1-3. This is a rematch, again, of an earlier season game. This is an opportunity for Ryan Fire to get the passing game started, I think. Me and Alfieri talked about this on the LF Live, about whether we think their passing game is going to be able to step up to where it was last season. It's currently not doing great. You know, the offensive line is not been great, and Jay's made some poor decisions on some plays. There are hints of magic. You know, that Harlan Kofi touchdown in the last game, but they're 10th for the current passing yards. 6th for scoring. They're kind of mediocre on a lot of their aspects of their team at the moment, but they are still 5-1. They've had good moments, regardless of things that have happened in the game. And more importantly, Glenn Tonga has been an absolute monster. Sergio Kendis has been an absolute monster. Tonga in particular, he's nearly 1,000 yards already. He's got 858 yards, 12 touchdowns, hasn't fumbled the ball, averaging pretty much 6 yards per carry. He's unstoppable. But when both those running backs are in form, you use both of those running backs. I think they're going to do that. I expected more, though, from the pass rush of the Ryan Fire. Now, they came in, they had Parkinson, they had Saleh. I thought both of those guys are going to be like 5 to 10 sack guys during the year. Currently, has not been the case. 0 on both, which is massively surprising. They need to get more pass rush. We know that Weed struggles under the pass rush. Could be an exploit of that team. I would like to see a bit more because that was one of the units I thought was going to be really strong this year, and it's kind of let me down. For Cologne, the passing game is still not there. It's not been there all year. They did put up 25 points on Paris, which honestly is quite impressive. And some people said about how they should be below Milan in power rankings. I heard that from my friends in Milan. I disagree, respectfully, just because they did put up those 25 points, which is incredibly hard to do. Weed is about 60%. It just isn't really unlocking the full potential. We did see Carlos come in and do pretty good. Carlos Hill, the new receiver, got 2 touchdowns this debut. But they've also struggled to stop the run. They have an American interior defensive tackle with William Lydell. So for them to struggle with the run is a major concern. The D is allowing nearly 37 points per game. That's awful. And against the Ryan Fire, which are one of the better offensives in the league, it's going to be a big one. If you're a fantasy player, I mean, I don't think it's much of a hot take to be playing Glenn at this point. But Glenn is in line for a big one. He is a bit banged up, so maybe play Sergio as well. Could be a bit of a sleeper pick for those who are involved with fantasy football. I'm going to go for a 42-7 win. I think it should be quite a dominant performance. Ryan Fire goes 6-1. Cologne struggling still. And that's going to do it. All of the games evaluated, cut up, decided, tape watched, players evaluated, Chad video started. You'll be happy to know. Hopefully that'll be out this week. I'm not going to be doing watch on Saturday because my friend has a baby shower. So I'll be doing it Sunday, probably, most likely. That's going to be probably how it goes. And then you'll have my live on Monday. You'll have live on Thursday as well. So, yeah. This one's being recorded on a different day that it usually is. And will be out the day after I've recorded. So, there's a lot of signers going on. I didn't talk too much about the signers in this one because they're still literally coming out as I'm talking about them. So, trade deadlines also, or not trade deadline, but you know, the signer deadline is coming up too. So that's going to be incredibly interesting how they navigate that. If you guys enjoyed, subscribe, like, do all the normal things. See you guys soon. This Chad one should be really good. I'm hoping to make a kind of cool. I don't know what I'm doing in terms of animation. It's not going to be like crazy different to how it usually is, but yeah, it's an interesting narrative that I've kind of found during his time with the Cologne and Surge teams. Got some coaches that I've talked to as well, so that's always incredibly interesting to hear their opinion. I'm building up too much. I'll see you guys later. Thank you for watching and putting up with me. Stay sharp. Thank you. See you later. Goodbye.